Now close your eyes and picture your worst date ever. Was it a blind date, someone you met online, a friend of a friend of a friend? Now picture your best date ever. The setup scenario was likely similar. Someone you met from Match.com, your best friend's sorority sister's brother, your barista. Now open your eyes and consider committing voluntarily to both a series of dates, good and bad, for a year. This is exactly the premise of Rachel's book, The Science of Single, one woman's grand experiment in modern dating, creating chemistry and finding love. Eager to reminisce on my own days of DC dating, I soaked in the familiar scenes of Rachel's year, the good, the bad, and the guy who wanted to split the check. What struck me immediately upon delving into the book was how I did not feel like I was part of this great and immensely courageous research project. Rather, I felt more like I was sitting across the table from a longtime girlfriend, where we would dish on events from the night before, sparing no gory details or swoon-worthy details. Together, we would dissect each date, what he wore, what he did, if he paid, and if there was any chemistry, and if there were plans to see him again. Rachel's experiment takes her readers to places where many of us have considered but never dared to go, including dating in other cities, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Boston, to name a few, hiring a dating coach, and trying the now conventional online dating sites, and even challenging her friends to set her up on blind dates. She went on more than one date with more than one guy with whom she had absolutely no connection, while barely making it through a first date with a man she may have pinned her hopes and dreams upon. Ultimately, we all want to know, did she find love? Was there chemistry? Is it all happily ever after all? To share her musings on the great experiment of finding love, please join me in welcoming Rachel Machacek.
Hi, thanks for being here today on this beautiful day. I wrote this book about dating, and it came out of a really bad date, or a series of really bad dates over a period of time. And I had this distinct feeling that I was failing at the dating process, namely because it wasn't going anywhere like down the road of marriage and children, and that seemed to be the template that everyone else was following, and I wasn't. So I wondered what I was doing wrong. And the really bad date that kind of kicked it off was this guy that I met online, and I had just come out of a really kind of sour grapes relationship with this guy who lived like 3,000 miles away, and it was never going to work out anyway, and it took me a while to figure that out. And when I did, I was like, all right, I just need to get back out there. It's January, it's my New Year's resolution. I'm going to put my profile back up online. And so I met this guy online, and he said, can I buy you a drink out? And I was like, okay. And there were some red flags. In one of his pictures, he didn't have a shirt on, and and that, isn't necessarily terrible, but I've found that the men that I go out with aren't putting profiles of them or pictures of themselves up without a shirt on their profile. Anyway, but I overlooked that. I set my filter pretty low because who was I to judge? And I went on this date with him, and he was a tough customer. He didn't really talk or smile. And I just kept trying to make it work on this date. And it just we never took off. We didn't have chemistry. We had no connection. And unfortunately, we had talked about where we worked or where we lived. And we had to walk back the same way together. And it was a terrible 10-minute walk. And I got to my corner, and I stopped to say goodbye because that's what you do. And he kept going, and he actually picked up his pace into a run, a jog, a light jog. He wasn't breaking a sweat. It was the middle of January, but it was a definite pick up the pace. And he's, looking at me from like this way, going, "Nice to meet you," and I was just like, "Bye," and it was really, really humbling. And obviously, it was all about him. There was nothing I could have done. I don't blame myself for that. But I definitely had this feeling of like, what am I doing wrong that this is happening? So I went home and I pitched an article to my editor at the time. I was freelancing for the Post. And I was like, I want to write about dating. And she's like, how about you review some self-help books and then you can implement the advice and write about it. And so I set out to do that, ended up meeting someone. So I just reviewed the books. And because I thought, I have a connection with this person. I want to preserve it, and I don't want to ruin it. And so I wrote this article where I reviewed some self-help books, and a literary agent saw it, and she thought it could become a book. And she was like, yeah, why don't you just go read some books and implement the advice like you were planning on doing and call it a day. And I was like, oh, that sounds kind of boring. I want to do everything that I possibly can to meet people. And so, I decided I would create this experiment where I could be sort of an observer in my dating life and not be so attached to the outcome. And so I decided I would go online again and meet people, and I would go to singles events, and I would have my friends set me up, and I would go to matchmakers, and I went to other cities to date, and I read more self-help books and implemented the advice this time. And I finally got a dating coach to help me, literally just go out and pick up guys. And I spent a year doing this, and I kind of just thought my problem was, it's just hard to meet guys, and, dating is kind of tough to get through. But it was kind of this year of self-discovery where I realized my own limitations in the dating process and my unrealistic expectations and this ideal template of the perfect mate that was kind of getting in the way of my happiness. So yeah, it was kind of an uncomfortable year. I was definitely having the first 3 months were tough, because I just really felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and I was working on this book, and in that way, I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing in that respect either. And there was this collision of, is this date for the book, or is this date for your life? And I was like, it's all kind of one big messy mess. And but eventually, I started to ease into it, and I got used to the process of dating and just going out and putting myself out there and feeling comfortable with that level of vulnerability. And I kind of got good at it. And it didn't necessarily mean that the dates were any better. I have to say, I still date. My dating life isn't that much different. Like, I go out with some people and it's awesome, and I go out with some people and it's not. But my perspective has changed dramatically. A date that doesn't work out isn't a failure on my part. I'm much more comfortable with, I guess, this unbeaten path that I felt like I was on. When you're in your early 30s and all your friends are getting married around you and having kids, it's tough. It's tough to feel comfortable with being single. And part of being single, if you want something more, is dating. And that in itself is hard as well. So I think spending a year working on the dating process, really, I just kind of grew up a little bit and became more comfortable in my own skin with dating and just myself in general. So with that, I will read to you one of my favorite dates. This is in the online dating section, which is the first chapter of the experiment. I should say, I didn't tell any of the people that I was going out with that I was working on a book or an experiment, except for a few blind dates and also the guys that I met in other cities. I felt like I wanted it to be really genuine, and I promised myself that I would only go out with people that I was interested in. But I didn't really think about the fact that I was putting myself in this situation where I would open myself up to this process I didn't know and try to go out with people I wasn't really interested in. So in retrospect, I probably should have just told everyone, but I didn't. And so these people did not know. This guy was the third guy that I went out with. And the first two guys I had been with were pretty much like all the other guys I dated, just pretty regular and nice, and didn't have a whole lot of chemistry. I kept going out with them just to see if I could grow some chemistry out of nothing. Helped to have some drinks involved often, sadly. And I had this big hang up on about guys' heights. I'm kind of tall, and I just wanted to date someone who was my height or taller. And I have a hard time finding that often. So this guy that I was going out with, I call him Carrot Top. He was pretty tall. I could not tell what he looked like in his profile pictures at all because he had sunglasses on. And that was kind of scary for me because I'm like, I don't even know if I'd recognize him. But I felt like, hey, I'm working on a dating book. Who cares? The worst thing, it'll be a good story. And it became a pretty good story. So with that, I will read to you that passage. Caution in the wind has a nasty backhand. I'll pull this back. Into week 5 of the experiment, there was a flurry of text and emails with the kid, and Scrappy 13 and I warmed again. And these are their my made-up handles for their online profiles. Additionally, I was prepping for Tuesday drinks with Carrot Top, who winked at me over the Onion the week before. And the Onion is the the personal site I was using. He's a writer, 39, 6'3", and says the last great book he read was Forever by Judy Blume. I didn't get in touch with Carrot Top at first because I couldn't tell what he looked like in his profile picture. In his close-up, he wore sunglasses, so I could only account for straight teeth. His other pictures reminded me of Carrot Top, the comedian, before aliens abducted him and replaced him with a plasticized clone. I spent a good 30 minutes clicking on Carrot Top's pictures, trying to decide what I thought. Ultimately, I decided to do nothing. I liked his profile, but I couldn't tell what he looked like. I looked at his pictures again the next day, presumably under the impression that I had developed superhuman vision overnight that would have allowed me to really see what he looked like behind his shades. Of course, I couldn't, and so decided that, like the profiles of guys with no shirts on and profiles without pictures, profiles with pictures of guys wearing sunglasses are no-nos, too many unknowns. But Carrot Top saw that I was stalking his profile through the Who's Viewing Me link, which lets you see everyone who has checked you out, and he sent an email. We should talk already. Oh, okay. We volleyed funny emails and made a drink date. How bad could it be? If nothing else, he's tall. I've had plenty of women tell me that they ended up marrying someone they never thought they'd be attracted to. He was so funny or so caring or had a personality so superlative that it made up for bald spots, hairy backs, and bad teeth. Once I saw Carrot Top, though, I wanted to duck under the bar or sidle out the back door. He didn't look like I thought he would look. It wasn't his face that gave me pause. It was those damn sunglasses, the ones that got me into this mess, dangling from disintegrating croquis. It was the crumpled black tee, clearly swiped out from under a pile of wet towels in haste, and tucked into the checkered pants that made him look like he should be darting around in a clown car routine. Based on his stylistic blunders, I'd conjured a vision of Carrot Top's apartment, a mass of dirty clothes strewn over the bed and chairs, half-empty mugs with floating mold, and a tangy, unidentifiable smell. It was quite possible that Carrot Top had an immaculate, bacteria-free, sensibly furnished place. But first impressions are everything, and hell, I'd spent some time applying mascara and coiffing my hair for him. But then Judith's calm and cool voice of reason that lingers in my frontal lobe instructed me yet again to overlook the superficial crap. And Judith is my therapist, who I saw weekly throughout this experiment and continue to see weekly. Those things can be changed, she reminded me. Croquis can be burned, shirts washed and ironed, pants tailored so they're not high waters. So I didn't run and instead focused on the positive. Finally, someone had exceeded the height requirement. Should we get mojitos? Carrot Top pronounces it mojitos. And with this suggestion, an epic 3-hour date at Meze, a little Mediterranean joint down the street, ensued. Carrot Top has been talking nonstop since we sat down at our table at the patio. We had a sweet spot right on the corner by the sidewalk that would have been a lot sweeter if the adjacent table hadn't been inches away and occupied by a couple who'd been eavesdropping on our conversation. They shot me looks of sympathy as Carrot Top made it evident to everyone within a 6-foot radius that this is our first date, and yes, we met online. Look at me, he seemed to shout without even opening his mouth. Despite the tsunami of craziness around him, I don't think I'd ever met someone that comfortable in his own skin, and I found that endearing. Unfortunately, he lacked any sense of subtlety. What kind of mojito are you getting? I go for an obvious conversational opener, even though with Carrot Top, I don't need to say a word. Eh? He puts his finger to his right ear. What kind? I point to the menu. Oh, sorry, I don't hear so good. You're gonna have to speak up. He's not kidding. He played in a band for years, a lot of loud music. Adrenaline whistles straight out of each and every hair follicle in my head. I don't know if I can do this. I can't spout off my life details in a voice that will inevitably engage the 2 top next to us, the 4 top at our diagonal, and anyone hustling by on the sidewalk. So I make like a clam, which Carrot Top gleefully takes as his cue. He swaggers onto center stage and launches into his comedy routine. He did not say in his profile that he wanted to try stand-up, which I took to be a positive because I adore funny men. I certainly didn't realize he meant that he wanted to do this on a date. It's not long before he starts unself-consciously and quite purposefully dropping words like retard and homo. He has definitely crossed the border from off-color into inappropriate, and that even for someone like me, who thinks political correctness could stand a good flogging, is deal-breaker territory. My only escape is my drink, so I drink more. Oops. So does Carrot Top, and he gets louder and more absurd. We move from short buses to his tooth retainer, which he shows me by flinging his head back and pointing to the metal contraption binding the back of his two front teeth. Here it is. Hi, here. I don't seem interested enough, so he flings his head back again. The date has become a series of dirty bombs going off every minute like clockwork. Yet somehow, instead of running for cover, I stay and absorb every last piece of shrapnel flung my way. I blame the mojitos. They made me dumb and hungry. And so I say yes to ordering food. Just as the hummus and pita is set between us, Janine walks by. Janine is my soulmate. I met her a couple years ago. I was quitting my part-time job working at a hardware store, and she was starting. Since then, we've dissected every morsel of the male psyche on one couch or another while drinking enormous bottles of Chardonnay. Hey, I grab her arm and practically rip it off. I'm so relieved to see her. I introduce her to Carrot Top. She's smiling a little too wildly. I know what she's thinking. What the heck? I know what Carrot Top is thinking. More audience! I can hear the jackpot bell going off in his head. I love Rachel's hair. Isn't it pretty? Carrot Top endears himself to Janine with compliments to her friend. I am indeed having a fabulous hair day, which are few and far between when you're in the perpetual grow-out stage I linger in. Why, yes, it is. Janine cocks her head to the side, bemused, while I smile off into space, pretending that this is the most normal date ever. I want Janine to whisk me away, but I know that isn't possible. So I'm thankful when she leaves, because I can't take the whole business of worlds colliding. I don't want Carrot Top infringing on my inner circle, ever. I have to go to the little boy's room. I'll understand if you're not here when I get back. Carrot Top hops up from his chair. Jesus, seriously, save me. Someone, save me. I sit motionless while he's gone, allowing the atoms that have been whipping around my head to settle down so I can think clearly. And just as I gather together my discombobulated senses, you're still here. He's back. At one point, I did seriously consider hopping the rail and booking it home, though I don't think I could ever tap into the cowardice it would take to ditch a date. Of course I am. I suck down the last of mojito number 2, and since the hummus is mostly gone, I'm hoping this is the end. Then our waiter drops off a third round. When did we order those? He sets down Carrot Top's pineapple mojito, leans over him to deliver mine, and exits stage left. Carrot Top leans over the table and whispers, "Did you smell his armpits?" No. I brace myself. Well, he leans in closer with a dramatic pause. I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but he pauses again and slowly glances left, then right. They smelled like... He leans in, cupping his right hand around his mouth, voice lowered to an exaggerated whisper. Vagina. He enunciates the word carefully and through his nasal passage, so the gine syllable makes my arm hair stand up and shake. I'm speechless. But then I lean back in my plastic deck chair and smile with the same satisfaction Bart has after he's finally broken me down, and I get up 5 a.m. to feed him. That's my cat. What? The tables have turned. I've caught Carrot Top off guard. Oh, nothing. It's just that my coworkers will thank you tomorrow for this story. Really? He says. I've made it into your water cooler talk? Oh, you have no idea. Definitely. We both laugh, though I'm pretty sure for different reasons. And I actually am pretty lucky that that was one of the worst dates. Thank you. It was terrible in the sense of he was pretty self-absorbed and not really terribly interested in getting to know me, but also he was a funny guy, so it wasn't like the first date that kicked us off with the guy with no shirt on in his profile picture who wouldn't talk. But yeah, that was probably it was interesting that happened pretty early on. I was thinking it would there'd be this year of terrible dates that culminated in something explosive, but it actually got a lot better as I went along. I met some people that I really did connect with and wanted to forge something more with. And, sometimes I found out that they were just out of a relationship, and so that wasn't going to be possible. Or one of them found out about the fact that I was writing a book, and that became a problem. And so in the end, well, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't tell you what happens in the end. You have to read the book. I won't tell you what happens with the dating, but I think for myself in the end, I really I just learned so much about like what's important. And I don't think I ever really go into anything with much of a plan. This is probably the most planned I've ever been in my entire life, setting some criteria to write this book. And I think it's really important. I learned that it's really important to have some sort of idea of like what's important to you in a relationship. I think a lot of us go out there with this idea of, okay, I really want to date someone who's tall and has good hair and, has nice shoes and takes me out. But, these things can exist in a relationship that's supportive and wonderful, but that does not make a relationship supportive and wonderful. And so I learned how to kind of rejigger my checklist to something a little more realistic and less, something I came up with in my head as the perfect ideal. And that's been, I think that checklist is actually, I'm still kind of working with it a little bit even after all these years. But it's made dating a lot better for me because I'm looking for things that are a bit more fundamental and interesting to me for a relationship versus just how this looks from the outside. So, yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, yeah, if you could come to the mic. Sorry. I can. It'd be hard not to.
So do people now come to you for advice on dating, and what do you
the funny thing about all of this is that I've become this sort of dating expert, which is surprising to me because this is like a list of like dating foibles, which is okay, and I think it makes for a fun, entertaining book that people can learn from, but it's definitely not a self-help book. I do have things that I've learned and gleaned from the experience that I can, impart to people. But yeah, I blog on my website, and I get people who send me questions. They're kind of dire. They're like, hey, I've got this date in 2 days, and this guy that I went out with before, he didn't pay for me, and I really want him to want to pay for me, and how do I get him to pay for me? I'm like, I don't know. Let's talk about why it's so important for you to want him to pay for you. So I think sometimes I can answer the questions and feel somewhat of an expert about it, but it's kind of an interesting space to be in because I'm not like schooled on any of this stuff. I'm like certified life dating coach, though I did find in my experience these the dating coaches don't necessarily have any of that certification anyway, so I guess I could just market myself that way. A lot of them were just telling me a lot of, practical, obvious things that you just sometimes when you're in the middle of it all, you just need someone to like beat you over the head with it. So did you you had another part of your question that I completely ignored, did you? Oh, okay.
Oh, well, what do you say? What's your advice?
Oh, right. Well, my big thing, and I did have this a lot when the book first came out, and I do some interviews, and people are like, what did you learn? And I was just like, I don't know. I learned dating is still hard. No, but I think a lot of it harkens back to what I talked about before, like keeping your expectations in check. Like, just because you're going on a date doesn't mean you should start planning your wedding dress or the flowers. Like that's you're not quite there yet. Obviously, and just because a date doesn't work out doesn't mean it's a failure. And also the checklist stuff, that's a big one I always go back to because I have, I do have a lot of, it's both women and men. It's kind of interesting that there's a lot of men who are grappling with this too. I thought for sure they would look at this book and be like, women, they crazy. I knew it all along. But they are kind of struggling with the same thing. So I encourage everyone to like work on their checklist and what's really important to them. And some people are like really, really invested in that process. And other people I never hear from again because that's a tough thing to do. Yes.
Have you ever tried speed dating?
The question is, did I ever try speed dating? And yes, that was part of singles events in my chapter 2. And that was kind of interesting. I think I described one speed dating event like whack-a-mole, where I'd have this guy sit down in front of me because the guys were moving around, the women were stationary, and the guys would sit down in front of me, and you'd have like 3 minutes to like figure out if you want to go out again. And they'd say some of the darndest things. And, sometimes it was just awkward and fine, whatever. I mean, everyone's feeling awkward at those things. But at that point in this experiment, I was pretty closed off. So I'd just be like, whack them down. Next person comes up, whack them down. Next person pops in, whack them down. And I actually went on a speed dating event towards the end of the experiment, when I had gone through a lot of these processes that I've been talking about, the internal discovery. And I was a bit more open, but it's a tough one. Like, I'm not big on having people hear what's going on in my conversation with someone else. And these people are like right next to you. And there's like I feel like everyone's watching and seeing me like flail. But it's a good way to meet people. I think, I don't know that I've ever met anyone that's met anyone through a speed dating event, but I think it's nice nice way to get out there and meet a lot of people in a very short period of time. Anyone else? Go ahead. You're supposed to go to the mic, so I will encourage you to come up to the mic. Yeah, I can.
I wanted to know with the one, I don't want to give too much away, but the one you had a connection with and he really didn't like when he found out about the experiment.
Right.
Was it more that he was deceived or that you were going to continue with it? What bothered him so much?
It was probably a combination of things, and he had some other things going on in his life that he felt pretty private about, and I understood that. But yeah, I think it was a combination. Like, we had gone out for like 2 weeks, but it was one of those things where you meet someone, it's like connect, you're seeing each other a lot, it happens very quickly. And so I'm like grappling with, okay, I've got 2 more weeks of this experiment and then I'm done. I have to go out and pick up guys 2 times, maybe go on a couple dates. We haven't committed to each other. What do I do? And I think it's, I don't know. I think I did the right thing, actually. But then he found out. I have no idea how he found out. But he asked me at one point, he was like, "Are you writing about this?" And I was like, "What makes you say that?" So yeah, that was a big struggle. And, initially he was okay with it, and then he wasn't, and then he was, and we kind of went back and forth. And, it was a tough one. So... But I don't think of it. I think if I had been upfront about it, like if I just told everyone I was working on this book ahead of time, I think he never would have gone out with me. He wasn't one of those kind of people who'd be open to that. Someone else had a question?
How many dates did you go on?
The question was, how many dates did I go on? Well, I know there were 60 guys that I went out with, but some of them I would go out with like 5 times, and some, it was like 40 minutes of my life. So I think it's about like 110, 120 altogether. Like one day I went on 3 dates all in one day. I was dating in other cities at the time, and so I had like a weekend to like crank out these dates. It was really romantic. Can't tell you how romantic it was. And all these guys knew about it too. So like one guy knew that I was leaving to go out with somebody else. And I was like, this is so weird. But yeah, that was like 3 dates in one day. And, but then, I'd go for a couple weeks and not have a date. So yeah, I think it was about 110, 120 dates total. Yeah.
So I read your blog.
Can you come to the mic? I'm sorry. Oh, it's not on? Oh, okay. Well, yeah, don't worry about it then. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry.
I read your blog a lot, and do you know this hiker guy in real life?
Okay, so I think he has a little bit of a crush on me. So I blog, and I have a couple of people that are pretty regular commentators, and one of them is another blogger called Geek Hiker, and he lives in LA, and he comments all the time, and he also emails me like privately and asks me dating questions. That's how it started, and then he started emailing me, just to say hi, and then and check in, and then he was emailing me at a time that was really busy for me, and I didn't get back to him. And I have like all these email accounts now. It's like one for like dating questions, and my personal email account, and my work email account. And so he was emailing me at the dating questions email account, and so I was like, okay, well, we're kind of like friends. So I gave him my real email account, and he's emailing me at both of these accounts and checking in and saying, hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. Are you mad at me? I was like, I don't even know your name. And he won't tell me his name because he's like this anonymous blogger, and he got burned before. Because he also writes a little bit about like his dating life and how he's feeling about things. So he prefers to stay anonymous, which I totally respect. And we went back and forth about the fact that he wouldn't tell me his name. And I just feel like, well, I mean, that's fine, but we have to have sort of a boundary then. But he still emails me. I mean, he checks in. Yeah, I think he definitely has a crush on me. I mean, he's admitted to that. He's like, whenever you're in LA, just let me know. And I was like, well, yeah, no. I mean, I kind of feel like we're besties now, but yeah, I have, there's a few people that and mostly it's women. I have a lot of women like emailing me for advice, and some of them email me pretty regularly, and I actually really like those relationships that I've forged, even though I don't know them. A lot of them date in DC, and so we have sort of a camaraderie, which I really have enjoyed. And I don't mind not knowing about them, but he's just looking for more. Like he was looking for me on OkCupid. I have a profile online. And so he wanted to know my OkCupid profile handle so he could look at my pictures. I was like, I don't know. Like, this is weird. So, yeah, there's some interesting crossover from that. Please do. There's another woman that actually comments a lot, and she actually has emailed me before with the same question, like, what's up with Geek Hiker? And I'm like, I don't know. But I cannot wait to tell him about this question. Maybe it's meant to be. Maybe I'm supposed to move to LA and be with him. I don't know. No. He actually told me I wasn't adventurous enough for him. I was like, whatever. Anyone else? Yes.
Are there differences in the dating culture in different cities?
That's a good question. The question was, are there differences in the dating cultures in other cities? And, you know, people look different. Like, they dress differently. And, like, the men in LA are, like, they're really attractive. More so than DC, I found, in some ways. Well, they're better put together, I think. More metro. Whereas the guys in DC are, like, big beard. Which I like better, but whatever. So, but the thing is, I don't think so, because every time I'd go to another city and I'd talk to a woman there about dating, she'd be like, it's so hard. You have no idea. These guys. And all the guys are like, oh, it's great. I have a great time. I mean, and obviously there are exceptions to both of those rules, because I know plenty of women in DC who have a great time dating and plenty of men in DC who have a hard time. But generally speaking, the consensus is like, I think it's more of a male-female thing. And I think it goes back to expectations, because women, I mean, we're on, you know, whether we like it or not, there is sort of this like biological component involved with relationships. And if you want to have kids, there's a timeline. And with men, it can be a little more carefree. So that's what I've chalked it up to thus far. So anyone else? What? Am I writing a second book? Yeah, I am, but not about dating at all. And not about me. This was a lot of information to put out there. And I'm really glad that I was able to be so honest, even though after having it published, I was like, oh, crap. Like, I'd let my parents read it, and I was like, I thought that was the big hurdle, but then all of a sudden it's like, wow, you know, not that the world is going to read my book, but people who do are going to know all this stuff about me. And people do come up to me and feel like, you know, I feel like I know you so well. Let me tell you all of my problems. And I'm always open to listening to it, but it's a little bit one-sided because I don't know that person because I didn't read their book. But anyway, so short answer is yes, but it's still quite the kernel of an idea, so I won't talk about it. Yes? I'm still looking for it. You know, I was trying to be pretty systematic with the approach. So, you know, it was like 1 month for online dating and 1 month for singles events, knowing that there would be, you know, it would get kind of messy in there. So, but I thought, okay, after 1 year, I should be done. And I had some things I wanted to accomplish. So, yeah, I guess I was pretty specific about it. And yeah, I decided dating. I'll just wait. Is that okay? Can you still hear me over the train? Okay, well, it's gone. Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say? Wrap it up. Oh, I thought you said keep going. I could just talk all day. Well, the exit strategy will be a good last question. So yeah, I wanted to learn how to like meet guys like in person and just be able to pick them up. That was like sort of the end all be all for me because I can be pretty shy and introverted, particularly when it comes to things that have higher stakes like dating. So I felt like that was kind of it. And once I could go out and do that, then that would be it. Though I have to say, and so I stopped the experiment and that was it. And I called it quits. I started writing and wrote the book, but I feel like it's just kind of latched onto my life in a way, and in a good way. You know, it's become sort of a part of me, like this whole process of dating. So, yeah. Thank you so much.